We're talking about the climate emergency and the declaration that so many councils now worldwide have done. And we're talking to a councillor from the councillor Darebin in Melbourne, who were actually the first council in the world to declare a climate emergency, and now we're approaching closing in on 400.
365,
okay.
And we reckon we'll get to 400 in the next couple of months.
So why is all this happening, Trent? What's your belief about that?
I think there are a few forces at work, but they come down to some pretty basic things happening all around the world. The first one is that people are fed up. So they have been demanding action for a long time. They haven't seen it at the state or federal level, and local government and local governments around the world are actually the closest level of government. So it is a lot easier for a citizen in any society to get in touch with their local council and say, I want you to take a stand. And not only to take a stand, but also to push others to take a stand. So we talk about the upwards, which is up the political chain through the state and federal level, the outwards, so the horizontal, which is us influencing other councils, and then the downwards, which is actually all the other organisations that we have an impact on, influencing them. Darebin became the first climate emergency council in the world in December 2016. It was pretty lonely for a while there, but there's been this tipping point, and the tipping point in the UK has been largely built off the back of the Extinction Rebellion. So people saying we are taking to the streets to stand up for a safe climate future and against extinction, not just of other species, but also of humanity, basically.
Yeah, well, we're all connected.
They're all connected.
Yeah.
And so the local government response in that case, and even in the state, in the central parliaments, has been one of them saying, well, what can we do? We can recognise the climate emergency. So it's been much more about government saying this is actually the reality of the science. In the US, very similar. Councils that have actually looked at Darebin and copied our motion, or in fact quoted from our report. And that's been really inspiring to have places like Los Angeles, which is one of the largest cities in the world, come on board, and then Greater London. So it's not just small places like Darebin, which we have 160,000 residents, but also these mega cities, and they influence so many more as well. So we are seeing tipping points. These cities are just a fraction of all the cities in the world, and we're not trying to get everyone, but we know that this pressure is now starting to have an impact up through state and federal, and we are looking to see which will be the first state government and which will be the first national government that actually recognises the climate emergency.
Yeah, and which do you think, heart of hearts, which do you think will happen in Australia?
In Australia, the ACT government is probably the most advanced in terms of its emissions targets. The ACT Minister for Environment and Climate Change, Shane Rattenbury, who's the Greens member in a Labor Greens government in the ACT, he has signed the Climate Emergency Declaration. And so I've said to him, right, when do we take that into Parliament, Shane? So I would see that they'd be the first target for a state or territory government. I think next you're probably looking like somewhere like Victoria, where there is a growing climate emergency movement. Probably, and there are a number of politicians, in fact, in Parliament who have now spoken about the emergency.
Yes.
Enacting that into state policy and into the sort of plan that we need, which is a complete transitional authority that actually has the sort of powers of Treasury to re-engineer supply chains, to keep people safe, to do those things. We have extreme weather events happening right at the moment, and the response is very traditional. It is not a climate emergency response.
So you were suggesting that the way to do it is to take the politics out of it and just have this board or authority responding to what the science is saying.
That seems to be the most common sense methodology, and that's actually what we've done in times of war. In fact, we've had joint cabinets on in terms of our national response to keep people safe. This is beyond politics, and the maturity that we need amongst political leaders and community leaders and business leaders and the community more generally is that we've got to take out the partisanship and actually be driven by what the science says we need to do to keep people and animals and the planet safe. So I'd love to see a state government get some policy bravery around this and actually say this is so serious that we need to enact the legislative powers to actually have a safe climate transition authority that would actually be really working at that premier level to drive that sort of level of decision making.
And I don't think they see it as being politically a political suicide. I guess at this stage to do it, but I think if people are wanting something, they're wanting leadership.
Yep.
And the same in the war. No one argued that, or very few people argued that we didn't have to take part. That was a national emergency. We needed to be part of it, and just the politics would drop completely, and that didn't take long.
That's right. In fact, as the circumstances change, those harder decisions become a lot more easy, and in fact, almost inevitable. And I think that's where we're heading. The sooner we make those decisions about government taking this seriously at that level, the better. But if you can see fire on the horizon, you don't turn your back and say, "We'll sort that out later on."
Yeah, or how hot is it?
Or how hot is it? you actually start taking action.
The Sustainable Hour.
For a green, clean, sustainable Geelong. The Sustainable Hour.